So in the Trump era and in 2016, you are, a cuck and a shill and an apologist for the neoliberal establishment. And
right.
sadly,
It
despite
pays.
Yeah, I mean, and even Matt and I, whom obviously have better politics than you, unfortunately, are still, dragged and tarred by the cowardly and fear-based brand that you have.
Right.
But in the Obama era,
I am nakedly anti-moon falling into Lake Michigan.
For those that don't know, we're definitely doing a
Who
TMBS
doesn't know
style.
that? People know that.
There's some people new to these shows that some of those references are like, who the hell are you talking about?
We need like a glossary.
We really do.
Website.
We do need we really do. During the Obama era, though, and you brought me on right around the 2012 election, and this was you were ahead of the curve, did really good reporting on Occupy, and you were a whiny bitch about Obama's attacks on the social safety net. And you were actually really concerned about, obviously the drone stuff, but really Wall Street and Obama's willingness to make concessions on Social Security and Medicare. Can we play one clip, and then I want you to tee off on it? But this actually kind of distills it pretty well. This is up until 2013. It's amazing that in 2013 this was still going on, because I think, was it 2015, Obama reversed himself and actually called for an expansion of Social Security?
Oh, I don't know if he called for an expansion, but the Senate did a non-binding resolution.
No, there was actually maybe even 2016, but Obama did have some kind of shift on that.
He
very late in the game.
He took the COLA increases off the table. Anyways,
at the very least, this is actually Bernie Sanders interrogating Jacob Lew, who's Obama's Treasury Secretary. This is 2013. On them introducing chain CPI, which you can explain. I'll let you have the whole politics of Obama and explain the politics of Social Security right after we play this.
As you know, Mr. Lew, many economists will tell you, including people from the AARP and quite knowledgeable people on senior issues, that the current formulation underestimates inflation for seniors because it doesn't fully take into account what seniors spend money on, which is prescription drugs, healthcare, heating, food, which is going up faster than general inflation. I understand the theory of the chain CPI is that if you don't want steak, you can eat chicken. In my state, the weather gets 20 below zero, and a lot of elderly people spend a lot of money on heat. Your budget, the president's budget, is going to make significant cuts in LIHEAP for a start. But on top of that, I want you to tell the elderly people in Vermont, what substitute they might use for heating oil when the weather gets 20 below zero. Do you have any good ideas for them on that one?
Well, Senator, I don't disagree that heat is a big issue in Vermont. It's a big issue in the Northeast.
Second point that I want to ask you is that White House spokesman Jay Carney said, and I think, by the way, you said something fairly similar, but this is what Carney said, November 26, 2012, we should address the drivers of the deficit, and Social Security currently is not a driver of the deficit. End of quote, adding that Social Security should be addressed on a quote-unquote separate track. I think a number of administration people have acknowledged, Mr. Zients was here last week, that Social Security has a significant surplus in its trust fund, could pay out benefits for the next 20 years. If Social Security is not a cause of the deficit, why are you proposing in your budget to cut Social Security?
Senator, I think the President made clear in the budget, I tried to make clear in my opening remarks that the President would not normally choose to put a proposal like this forward. We have been in 2.5 years of budget discussions of one form or another, where it's been made crystal clear that there's no path to a bipartisan agreement, something that Republicans will sign on to with revenue, that doesn't include fixing the chain CPI, adopting the chain CPI.
Let me
go for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's basically saying we're negotiating. I mean, okay, at face value, he's saying in normal circumstances we wouldn't do this, as if like normal politics don't exist. Like there's not, like it's not normal for one party in a negotiation to want something different from another party. And so as this is abnormal, we're going to give them what they want right off the bat before we enter negotiations. The reality is that in January of 2008, before he was even inaugurated, Obama was talking about entitlement reform, which is, not even code for cutting Social Security and or Medicare. And, the chain CPI was basically, and Bernie described it very well. There were multiple models in which to measure inflation. Now, at first you think inflation, it's easy. You take all the prices, and if they've gone up, they've gone up. You take all the different prices, but it's just not that simple. And so there are different models which capture the actual experience of people, lived experience. The lived experience for an elderly person is different than it is for a lived experience of a 20-year-old, because a 20-year-old, it's like there's inflation. If pot is more expensive, is beer more expensive, is is like a fast food more expensive, is rental apartments in hip areas more expensive. That's how you measure inflation if you're 20. But if you're elderly, it's like, are drug prices more expensive? I need to keep my apartment at 70 degrees or 69 degrees or 68 degrees. Is heating oil more expensive? And chaining the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and sort of locking it into a non-dynamic relationship would cut Social Security over a certain period of time. And it necessarily impacts elderly people more, and the measure of inflation was not reflected in that CPI. The true implications of inflation for elderly people. But this was a long-term plan that Obama had and his folks. And frankly, I remember the first thing I was on TV for prior to the launch of this show, criticizing Obama, was the bankruptcy bill and the cram down. And it was shortly around, Bill Maher was critical of him at that time, I remember, because it was on Campbell Brown of all places, before she was a corporate reform, education reform. I mean, I just didn't know anything about her.
Former CNN host who now supports corporate charter schools.
Yeah, and I think I don't know where she is in that.
Yeah, but I haven't seen her in years.
Yes,
actually.
I think. But and she, I think, ultimately, if I'm not mistaken, married a Bush Iraq Provisional Authority official.
Paul
Guy
Bremer?
Dan Senor, I think.
Dan Senor.
Were those politically commissioned officers?
Yeah, CPO.
Politically commissioned officers.
And it was the bankruptcy bill and his basically not fighting for the cram down, which was to allow people in bankruptcy to knock off, I think, part of their principal on their homes, in the wake of the financial crisis. And also to relieve yourself of student debt.
Right.
And so that was the first, there's a problem with Obama, which I remember at Air America just saying, this is going to be great. We're going to have a fight with Obama from the left. This is going to be so radically different experience than dealing with George W. Bush. I was looking forward to that. And that's what it was. I mean, that's ultimately what it was.
Did it surprise you, though, that some people, just sort of totally seemed to apparently either they flipped their politics or you had really different politics from them and you didn't realize it in the Bush era?
Yeah, during the Bush era, it was, maybe I didn't, I wasn't as intimately involved with politics, in 1999, let's say. And I distinctly remember being in Cobb's Comedy Club in 1993 or 92 when Clinton won, literally being in that room, shadowing Mark Maron as he was, in between benders. And everybody was so excited about Bill Clinton. I just remember going relief, okay, but really, can you get excited about this guy?
The guy who executed the mentally incapacitated guy
It
while he was
was
running
that,
and ran on welfare reform and deficit reduction.
It was the corporate. It was just the corporate. I wasn't, I wasn't that sophisticated about politics that I could say the litany of policies. It was just more like the people I was reading were characterizing him in a certain way that I was like, this doesn't excite me that much.
Right.
And because I was a comedian, I didn't have the time dedicated to this, and there wasn't a lot of outlets. Frankly, there's no.
Yeah, who was it?
Well, there's no internet. So
what do
it's
you
like,
occasionally read The Nation?
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
books, but there was no, and maybe like the Village Voice, but I was out in LA at that time, so it was just, you had to, it was hard to get an assessment, particularly because the mainstream media was not really even that. We're not making assessments like that of the candidates.